Good thing we won't get any of that anymore. Horrible people with bad ideas. Oh, hey, Keir. I was trying to debate why he puts himself in pictures so much, because he doesn't like... I'm not trying to be mean, but he's not exactly photogenic, is he? And they're not the best pictures of him. So I don't know if it's like a deliberate strategy just to make him look like ordinary. But like, yeah, I don't know. He just looks a bit gormless there, doesn't he? Can I? Oh, okay, so this is actually a website. What? Why is it just full of pictures of him? This election is about change. A chance to stop the endless conservative chaos that has directly harmed the finances of every family in Britain. A moment where we can turn the page on a set of ideas that, over 14 years, have consistently left us more vulnerable in an increasingly volatile world, and an opportunity to begin the work of national renewal. A rebuilding of our country so that it once again serves the interests of working people. Every great nation is held together by shared beliefs. To outsiders, they may not seem exceptional or distinctive, but they are essential for a sense of collective national purpose. Britain is no different. But at this moment, two of our most important beliefs are in grave danger. First, that politics should be driven by a sense of service to the country, not considerations of party or self-interest. Second, that if you work hard, then, whoever you are, wherever you started in life, Britain is a country that will respect your contribution and give you a fair chance to get on. When I consider these beliefs, that this fucking video is like giving me epilepsy. When I consider these beliefs, it's hard not to think back to my childhood. Then, as now, Britain's place in the world was uncertain. Then, as now, our economy was gripped by stuttering growth and a cost of living crisis that hurt working people. Yet back then, there was at least a degree of security in being able to take those two fundamental beliefs for granted. For families like mine, this was a comfort. Oh wait, we need to zoom in a bit, don't we? The knowledge that Britain would offer your children a better future gave us hope. A hope that may not sound high-minded or particularly idealistic, but which families like mine could build a life around. To restore this hope, we must first end the conservative chaos. The visible decline in our communities, families weighed down by soaring mortgages, people waiting on trolleys in A&E, sewage in our rivers, is not an accident. Rather, it is a direct result of a governing party that, time and time again, puts its own interests and obsessions above the issues that affect families. The result is a vicious cycle, decline feeding off chaos, chaos to feeding off decline, that will continue if they return for 5 more years. Only a Labour government can break this cycle and stop the chaos. We must turn the page decisively on the conservative ideas that have caused the chaos. The world has become increasingly volatile, with a major war in Europe for the first time in a generation, and ever greater threats to the living standards of working people. This age of insecurity requires the government to step up, not stand aside. This means a return... Keep getting bubbles in my throat. This means a return to the foundations of good government: national security, secure borders, and economic stability. But it also requires an enduring partnership with business to deliver the economic growth we need. It needs more focus on long-term strategy, not the short-term distractions that can animate Westminster. And it demands a final and total rejection of the toxic idea that economic growth is gifted from the few to the many. Because whether it is crashing the pound to give tax cuts to the richest 1%, degrading public services because of a mess made by the banks, or the failure to invest in clean British energy that left us exposed when Putin invaded Ukraine, so much of what Britain has been through in the past 14 years is explained by a Conservative failure to face the future. Only Labour can turn the page. We must rebuild our country. It will not be easy, not only because there is no quick fix to the mess the Conservatives have made, but also because their failures have sapped our collective confidence that Britain can still achieve great things. I reject this with every fibre of my being. Despite all the chaos inflicted on Britain, the country I see is one where working people never let each other down. They came together in the pandemic, missed weddings, funerals and last goodbyes to save the lives of the people they will never meet. They dug deep in the years of austerity to keep delivering the public services people needed. And throughout the cost of living crisis, they found a way to support those less fortunate than themselves. We are still a great nation. We can achieve great things. What we lack is a government that can match the ambition working people have for their family and community, with a credible long-term plan. This manifesto is that plan, fully costed, fully funded, built on a rock of fiscal responsibility. At its heart are 5 national missions, with clear first steps to begin the journey of rebuilding that provide a clear destination for everyone invested in Britain's future. A new Britain, where wealth is created in every community, where the golden opportunity of clean British power is harnessed for lower bills, where your town centre has been revitalised and everyone feels safe to walk the streets, and everybody is your best friend. It doesn't actually say that. Where you can go to work and know you will be treated with dignity and respect. Where our children are equipped with the skills to thrive in the future. Where our NHS is once again at the cutting edge of healthcare. And where we show that politics can be about serving the country. I know some people will roll their eyes at this last sentence, yet serving our country is the only reason I came into politics. The defining purpose of my Labour leadership has been to drag my party away from the dead end of gesture politics and return it once more to the service of working people. I have changed my party. Now I want the chance to bring that change to the country. But to succeed we need everyone, every community to play their part. I know, after everything you have been through in the past 14 years, that this is a hard request to make. But I also expect deep down that you know this is what our country needs now, an end to the chaos, a turning of the page, and a patient but determined rebuilding of our country. So I invite you to join us in this common endeavour of national renewal. It's time to change Britain. Okay, so obviously that is written that was written a lot better than Rishi Sunak's introduction. He can string a sentence together, Keir Starmer, and he's definitely right about the Conservatives. Whether they will actually do anything good is another matter, isn't it? Yeah, this is the thing that makes me think that he's not joking with all these weird pictures of himself. I think he's all about change and stuff, and it's like Obama did that in 2008, mate. Like, I think he genuinely thinks he's quite an inspiring figure. Deliver economic stability, cut NHS waiting times, launch your new border security command, set up Great British Energy, crack down on antisocial behaviour, recruit 6,500 new teachers. Oh, God. The thing, when you get into the meat of it, it just sounds a bit like the Tory manifesto. Deliver economic stability with tough spending rules so we can grow our economy and keep taxes, inflation and mortgages as low as possible. None of that follows. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, guys. I kind of enjoyed the opening statement. I thought it was well written. It hit some of the right notes. There were bits I didn't like, but I don't know. I was like, yeah, let's get the Tories out. I was kind of with him for the most part. Tough spending rules so we can grow our economy. No. Tough spending rules are likely to shrink the economy. Keep taxes, inflation, and mortgages as low as possible. I like how this is also like... This is just like all the good things, isn't it? It's just like, we're going to get the good outcomes all together. You just trust us. Trust us. Trust me, bro. Cut NHS waiting times with 40,000 more appointments each week during evenings and weekends, paid for by cracking down on tax avoidance and non-dom loopholes. All right. We like it. We like it. Launch a new border security command with hundreds of new specialist investigators and use counter-terror powers to smash criminal boat gangs. Pardon me, everyone. Sorry for that. Socially conservative and economically controlled. I mean, yeah. This, like, counter-terror powers. Criminal boat gangs. Like, what is this fucking boat rhetoric? Five times reform misled UK voters in its election contract launch. Oh right, no, that's correcting reform, really. To what extent are these boat gangs? How real are these boat gangs? I mean, I have to admit, I haven't. I don't know that much about it. Sir Keir Starmer is seeking a deal with Europol for future Labour governments to try and stop gangs bringing in people across the channel in small boats. The Labour leader, who is in The Hague for talks with the EU agency, said smashing the gangs should be treated on par with terrorism. Any migrant returns deal may require the UK accepting migrants from the EU. The government claims a returns policy could lead to the UK taking 100,000 illegal migrants every year. Home Secretary Suella Braverman wrote on X, formerly known on Twitter, that Sir Keir would agree to make Britain the dumping ground for many of the millions of illegal migrants that Europe doesn't want. The dumping ground. Oh my God, I can't even start with the rhetoric about immigrants in this country. I like how we think of ourselves as less racist than the USA as well. It's like, no, we're not. Sir Keir said it was embarrassing the government is pumping out this nonsense, and his discussions were focused on sharing information on people smuggling gangs to stop boats getting on the water in the first place. It ought to be the UK government who decides who comes to the UK. But at the moment, because the government has lost control, it's those that are running the gangs that are putting people in boats to cross the channel. That's why I'm here at Europol saying how we can have better agreements to share intelligence, have joint operations to take these gangs down. I mean, like sharing intelligence with other countries, and I don't know. Yeah, it's not a stupid policy if the gangs are real. It's better than just being sort of reactive, I suppose. He also said that a Labour government would end the use of hotels for asylum seekers within 12 months of coming to office. In a bid to clear the backlog of asylum cases, Labour has said it would recruit an additional 1,000 Home Office caseworkers, establishing new asylum courts to speed up legal challenges and create a returns unit to accelerate the removal of failed asylum seekers. I like how much they spend, how many resources they expend to, like, stop immigration, which isn't even a negative anyway. At a time of austerity and balanced budgets, everyone accepts the need for a new EU-wide returns agreement. The Labour leader has suggested he may be willing to accept a quota of migrants in the UK in exchange for a deal. When pressed by reporters on Thursday morning, Sir Keir would not give a number of asylum seekers he would be happy to take in under a deal. That is classic Keir Starmer. Tries to talk the talk, licks his finger and puts it in the wind, whichever way the political winds are going. Yes, Labour are going to do that. But then when actually he's pressed, like, he can't say, we can't. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm actually going to do. The actual solution is to remove the demand for smuggling by opening up safe and legal routes. Well, wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it be the day? What the 100,000 figure is based on proposed EU rules setting migrant quotas. We wouldn't be bound by these because we're not a member of the EU. Stopping the boats. In total, 45,755 migrants crossed the channel in 2022, the highest number since figures began to be collected in 2018. So far this year, 23,382 people have made the crossing, according to the latest figures. There's nothing about whether these are actually criminal gangs. It's just assumed that they are. It's absolutely absurd. I just can't believe the state of the debate on immigration in this country. It's horrible. There's nothing proving that they're dangerous. Like, the essence of like reactionary conservatism is to be like, this thing is happening that I'm not familiar with and don't like. It must be the result of nefarious actors, criminals, dishonest people, bad morality, horrible foreigners, whatever. Like, obviously, if more people are coming across, maybe they need to. Jesus Christ, fuck you. Right, whatever. Stupid country. Set up Great British Energy, a publicly owned and clean power company, to cut bills for good and boost energy security paid for by a windfall tax on oil and gas giants. All right. We like that. We actually, I'm big on that. Crack down on antisocial behaviour with more neighbourhood police paid for by ending wasteful contracts, tough new penalties for offenders, and a new network of youth hubs. Youth hubs? A youth program that will tackle knife crime and address rising mental health issues. Okay. I mean, at least they've got that in there, even though they're a bit... And also, what do they mean by wasteful contracts? Hello, Atom. Up and at them. I like how when I try to get to the bottom of it, it just links back to the manifesto. It's just like a fucking loop. So I'm just... Contracts. What contracts are the wasteful ones? No, go away, Conservative Manifesto. We're finished with you. Finished with your party. Nationwide standards for procurement and establish shared services and specialist functions to reduce costs. Wasteful police procurement. What is this Is this a thing? This is so random. How fresh approach. So what's this? Police digital service. When was this written? Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's a thing. I don't want to get too bogged down in like specifically, but it just caught my eye because I was like, oh, well, at least it's okay. So the crackdown on antisocial behaviour is like more police through money saving, tough new penalties for offenders, and a new network of youth hubs. So yeah, obviously it's still buying into the sort of narrative of you know, persecuting offenders as much as possible in a way, but there is at least a carrot there, right? There's the sticks are there, but with the Conservatives it's only sticks. With Labour you've got carrots, you've got the network of youth hubs, because I do think that's been a big factor. Those have declined so much since the Tories came into power. Yeah, I really don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that they can cut waste. But whatever. Recruit 6,500 new teachers in key subjects to set children up for life, work in the future, paid for by ending tax breaks for private schools. I am so up for ending tax breaks for private schools, to be fair. I mean, I like this. I kind of like this. The border stuff is just sociopathic, as far as I'm concerned. So, can you stop? Is this... mission-driven government? I do feel like Mariana Mazzucato has had quite a big impact, right? Because she's been advocating mission-driven government. No, wait. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, here it is. And she is based, right, in the UK. So, look. Ooh, mission economy. So this was released in, like, 2018, I think? Oh, 2020. Yeah. A moonshot guide to changing capitalism. So, I do a mission-driven government. I feel like that's... and she uses the example of the moon landing, right? It does seem, yeah, quite influenced by that. Ending the Conservative chaos is vital, but turning the page with a new government is not in itself enough to tackle the deep-rooted challenges our country now faces. To rebuild Britain, we need to change how Britain is governed. For too long, Britain has been held back by governments that, because they lack a relentless focus on long-term ends, are buffeted about by events. Politics has enormous potential to change lives for the better, but too often different parts of the government have pursued their own narrow goals rather than working together. Government is at its best when working in partnership with business, trade union, civil society, faith groups and community. But without a shared project, those partnerships barely get off the ground. So, as well as a new administration with new priorities, Britain needs a new approach: mission-driven government. Mission-driven government means raising our sights as a nation and focusing on ambitious, measurable, long-term objectives that provide a driving sense of purpose for the country. It means a new way of doing government that is more joined up, pushes power out to communities and harnesses new technology, all with one aim in mind: to put the country back in the service of working people. Labour's 5 missions to rebuild Britain. Kickstart economic growth. To secure the high sustained growth in the G7 with good jobs and productivity growth in every part of the country, making everyone, not just a few, better off. So this isn't a real target, right? Like, as in, you know...
Despite reform, but what's your thoughts on their Bank of England plan? Kinda good idea. Hope Labour pick it up. Love the vids and insights.
Thank you very much, Vispian. I think we're going to have to do reform tomorrow. I actually haven't looked into it. I think what I'm going to do is kind of Labour Conservatives today, and then tomorrow I'll do Lib Dems and Reform and maybe Green as well. And then the day after that, it's the bloody election. But yeah, quickly, what is the reform? Reform UK announced plans to squeeze a bit of extra money out of the banking system on Monday. Could stop paying interest on the remaining £700 billion of commercial bank deposits created through quantitative easing. By paying a bank rate on those reserves, is having to transfer money over to the commercial banks. Cutting interest rates payments on those deposits is not a hugely radical suggestion. Two former Bank of England governors and the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown have suggested the entire cost of QE could be reduced by moving to a tiered system of reserves. That would mean some portion of commercial bank deposits would not receive any interest. The European Central Bank stopped paying interest on a very small portion, around 1% of that bank deposits. However, stopping interest payments entirely, as Tice wants to, is much more radical and much more dangerous. First, it would raise very big questions for the effectiveness of monetary policy. By stopping all interest payments to commercial banks, the Bank of England would effectively be left with a policy lever which is not attached to anything in the real economy. Paying bank rate on reserves anchors the implementation of monetary policy. We would have to be very careful how we implemented anything like that. Combine this with Tyson Farage's $40 billion tax cut could be quite the inflationary cocktail. This impact could be mitigated if the bank were to tier reserves, that is, only pay out interest on reserves which exceed a regulatory minimum. But this would also raise less money, and to repeat is not Tice's preferred option. For what it's worth, Bailey has never been keen on the idea, describing it as a tax on the banking system. It is also worth noting that consumers would likely have to bear the cost at some point down the line. Leaving aside the technicalities, there's a big question marks about how much the policy could raise. The short answer is that we don't know, because it depends on the future path of interest rates. As interest rates fall, the measures will be less lucrative. Tice said the policy would raise $35 billion over the next years, a figure which leading tax lawyer Dan Nidal described as magic. Different tiering systems would raise vastly different sums. For instance, Deutsche Numis suggested that moving to the ECB's tier system would raise £1 billion per year. Discussing his own proposals, Gordon Brown suggested the measures could raise a minimum of $1.3 billion annually, potentially more. Either way, it seems unlikely to fully fund Reform's Great British tax cut, not that they'll be bothered. Don't be surprised, though, if sooner or later one of the major parties makes a move on bank deposits. Yeah, so that article basically summed up my thoughts. So that interest on deposits is kind of how monetary policy is done. So you're taking away monetary policy. And I do think that, yeah, it's causing banks to hold on to money, right? And then potentially removing it is quite inflationary. I'm not sure I like that idea. I don't think they've thought it through. So anyway, sorry. So kickstart economic growth. Like, this isn't a real... So when I'm speaking to my students sometimes, right, I'm like, if you write something, a proposal, an argument, an opinion, try to make it something that, like, people could reasonably disagree with. And it's like, oh, we want the highest growth in the G7. It's like, yeah, of course. I don't think that's a real... If you're saying you're a mission-oriented government, what's the mission there? That's not a mission, it's an outcome. Make Britain a clean energy superpower. To cut bills, create jobs and deliver security with cheap and zero carbon electricity by 2030, accelerating to net zero. Now that is a mission, right? Okay. Take back our streets. By halving serious violent crime and raising confidence in the police and criminal justice system to its highest levels. Okay. So again, we're back to that's not a mission. That's like a really good outcome. Imagine if everybody loved the police and criminal justice system, it worked for everybody, and crime was halved or even eliminated entirely. That's not a mission. Break down barriers to opportunity by reforming our childcare and education systems to make sure there is no class ceiling on the ambitions of young people in Britain. Good luck with that one. Okay, so I support it, but it's just like you're going to abolish class. We've had enough. since William the Conqueror, for 1,000 fucking years, there's been too much class in this country, and Labour are going to take care of it, all right? Building on NHS fit for the future. That is there when people need it, with fewer lives lost to the biggest killers, in a fairer Britain where everyone lives well for longer. Okay, again, that's closer to an actual mission, right? Mazzucato says that the goal should be getting Britain building again, and the growth shouldn't be a mission but should result from missions. Agree. Building, our country cannot build anything physical or, social. Simply turn glass. Yeah, if I were the Prime Minister of the UK, I would simply deactivate the class extension. William the Conqueror was a mistake. It's funny to think that capitalism might not have happened if it weren't for William the Conqueror, isn't it? But that's maybe for another time. Delivering the change Britain needs will require perseverance. The starting point for delivering these missions is to ensure the foundations of good government are right. Labour will make sure we have strong national security, secure borders and economic stability. Building on these secure foundations, we have already set out the first steps for change. Today we present further policies in this manifesto as part of the journey of rebuilding our country. It's like this, it's more, there's more padding in this than the Conservative one, actually, I have to say. Because the Conservative one started with Rishi Sunak's statement, which is like shit, obviously, but then it kind of just got into the policies, and it was actually fairly substantive, even if it was completely misleading and wrong. Whereas now I'm like, I keep getting inspired, I'm so inspired, but I don't actually know what's gonna happen. Strong foundations. Kickstart. So it's weird that the national security thing isn't a mission, or it is, but it wasn't on the 5. Okay, whatever. No policy commitment in pursuit of Labour's mission matters unless we uphold the first duty of any government, to keep the country safe. Peace and security are hard-earned. They require constant vigilance. Over the last 14 years, geopolitical tensions have risen, while the Conservatives have hollowed out our armed forces. Now, Putin is attempting to break European security with his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Labour will meet this challenge by strengthening our armed forces and protecting our national security. Our commitment to the UK's nuclear deterrent is absolute. It is a vital safeguard for the UK and our NATO allies. As the party that founded NATO, we maintain our unshakable commitment to the alliance, and we will apply a NATO test to major defence programmes to ensure we meet our obligations in full. In recent years, threats to our safety and security have multiplied and diversified. Alongside greater conventional threats, we are faced with the growing emergence of hybrid warfare, including cyber attacks and misinformation campaigns which seek to subvert our democracy. To ensure the UK is fully prepared to deal with these interconnected threats, Labour will conduct a strategic defence review within our first year in government and will set out the path to spending 2.5% of GDP on defence. From the Skripal poisonings to assassination plots by the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, threats from hostile states or state-sponsored groups are on the rise, but Britain lacks a comprehensive framework to protect us. Labour will take the approach used for dealing with non-state terrorism and adapt it to dealing with state-based domestic security threats. Terrorism remains a significant threat. Labour will bring in Martin's Law to strengthen the security of public events and venues. We will update the rules around counter-extremism, including online, to stop people being radicalised and drawn towards hateful ideologies. Labour will also ensure the police and intelligence services have the powers and resources they need to protect the British people from terrorism and hostile espionage. There he is again. I think he genuinely thinks he's really inspiring. He's not a bad writer, but who looks at that and they're like, God, I will follow that guy till the ends of the earth. He looks like your dad's accountant. Secure borders. Britain is a tolerant and compassionate country. We have a proud tradition of welcoming people fleeing persecution and abuse. Schemes like Homes for Ukraine, Hong Kong humanitarian visas, and the Syrian resettlement program have provided important routes for refugees seeking sanctuary. You know, I mean, my mum used Homes for Ukraine. She has a Ukrainian refugee in her house. I do think it's a good program. I do feel like there's an obvious racial slant to these. I feel like Ukrainians were, at least for a while, more accepted than Syrians. But, you know, taken by themselves, they are good programs. But the system needs to be controlled and managed, and we need strong borders. Oh, for God's sake, why do you have to... I was trying to... whatever. The small boats crisis, fueled by dangerous criminal smuggler gangs, is undermining our security and costing lives. What? Is somebody going to provide evidence for this? Is this written by Starmer? No, I don't think so. The opening statement was, but I don't think all of it is. He's a generic soapy writer, terrible, just vacuous. Yeah, you're right. But it's just compared to the Conservative Manifesto, which was like error-ridden and like just really not like full of non sequiturs. I don't know if this is written by... Maybe it is written by Keir Starmer. Rather than a serious plan to confront this crisis, the Conservatives have offered nothing but desperate gimmicks. Their flagship policy to fly a tiny number of asylum seekers to Rwanda has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Even if it got off the ground, this scheme could only address fewer than 1% of the asylum seekers arriving. It cannot work. Chaos in the Channel has been matched by chaos at home. The Conservatives' unworkable laws have created a perma backlog of tens of thousands of asylum seekers who are indefinitely staying in hotels, costing the taxpayer millions of pounds every week. I mean, it is true that the Conservatives, taking their aims as a given, they have failed to achieve their aims, right? And they're both incompetent and malicious. Labour are going to be more efficient in their maliciousness. Labour will stop the chaos and go after the criminal gangs who trade in driving this crisis. We will create a new border security command with hundreds of new investigators, intelligence officers, and cross-border police officers. This will be funded by ending the wasteful migration and economic development partnership with Rwanda. I like how it's just wasteful rather than like horrible. The new command will work internationally and can be supported by new counter-terrorism style powers to pursue, disrupt, and arrest those responsible for the vile trade. We will seek a new security agreement with the EU to ensure access to real-time intelligence and enable our policing teams to lead joint investigations with their European counterparts. Labour will turn the page and restore order to the asylum system so that it operates swiftly, firmly, and fairly, and the rules are properly enforced. We will hire additional caseworkers to clear the Conservatives' backlog and end asylum hotels, saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. Labour will set up a new returns and enforcement unit with an additional 1,000 staff to fast-track removals to safe countries for people who do not have a right to stay here. We will negotiate additional returns arrangements to speed up returns and increase the number of safe countries that failed asylum seekers can swiftly be sent back to. And we will also act upstream, working with international partners to address the humanitarian crises which lead people to flee their homes and to strengthen support for refugees in their home region. Well, it's a good thing that Labour are going to end the war in Ukraine and in Syria. You could chuck in Myanmar and the Congo as well. Any food insecurity in the Middle East and North Africa, as well as sub-Saharan Africa. Poverty in Latin America. You know, it's good. It's good that Labour are going to use their diplomacy to tackle those. It's literally so paranoid and like I just hate it. There's not even any evidence about these criminal boat gangs. It's just assumed. Why don't they just declare world peace? Exactly. That could be another one of their missions, their targets, world peace. We're going to have the most world peace. That sounded a bit Trump-esque, didn't it? Every commitment a Labour government makes will be based on sound money and economic stability. This is a non-negotiable principle for our changed Labour Party. Siren voices may claim that there are no limits on what government can spend, or that tax cuts pay for themselves. I love the way they've bracketed MMTers and the Laffer curve together. It's interesting because there is a congruence between them, and I think wasn't Laffer, I don't know if you're there, Connor, but wasn't Laffer, didn't he mentor Mosler or something? I might be making that up. Triangulation. We reject this flawed ideology that was tested to destruction by the disastrous Conservative mini-budget. The British people are still paying the price of those unfunded commitments through higher mortgage costs, and taxpayers continue to foot the bill through higher interest payments, meaning less money for investment and public services. It's true. The impact was not confined to these shores. The Conservatives' recklessness sent out a signal of instability across the world that damaged our standing, making Britain a less attractive place for businesses to invest. The only difference between Labour and Tory rules is that Labour want a current surplus and Tories want a primary surplus. Oh, okay. I mean, that is kind of interesting. Labour will turn the page on this economic count. I mean, for the record, I do agree that if you're going to increase the deficit, generally speaking, tax cuts are like the worst way to do that, right? Because I don't think that they have as much of a boosting effect on the economy or even on people's finances as the Conservatives like to think. I think spending money in a directed way on the things that people need is much more likely to have positive knock-on effects. Not least because a lot of tax cuts just get saved, right? But it's also the type of economy you want to build. What gets spent privately versus what gets spent publicly. Obviously Liz Truss's approach was disastrous. The current budget moves into balance so that day-to-day costs are met by revenues. Debt must be falling as a share of the economy by the 5th year of the forecast. Okay. These rules allow for prudent investment in our economy. This represents a clear break from the Conservatives, who have created an incentive to cut investment, a short-term approach that ignores the importance of growing the economy. Okay, I mean, this is more sensible. So I was talking earlier about primary. So current expenditure excludes capital expenditure. So high-speed 2 rail infrastructure is the canonical example of capital expenditure. So the Conservatives want to cut all of that, right? Or include all of that in their balanced budget arithmetic. Whereas Labour are saying, no, that's investment, which is sensible. Unlike the Conservatives, Labour will never sideline the Office for Budget Responsibility for political convenience. Instead, we will strengthen the role of the OBR. Every fiscal event making significant changes to taxation or spending will be subject to an independent OBR forecast. Labour will safeguard taxpayers' money. We will end the link between access to ministers and an inside track for public contracts. We will appoint a fixed-term COVID corruption commissioner. Hey, try saying that 5 times fast. And use every means possible to recoup public money lost in pandemic-related fraud and from contracts which have not delivered. Yes, come on. And we will not tolerate fraud or waste anywhere, whether in social security or the excessive use of consultants. This consultants thing. Alongside strong national finances, Britain needs resilient family finances too. The Conservatives have left families struggling with the cost of living. Labour will take action to support families by tackling the underlying causes of the crisis. We will bring down the cost of energy. We will reduce food prices by removing barriers to businesses trading. We will make housing more affordable, expand access to childcare, and make work pay. We will support families with children by introducing free breakfast clubs in every primary school. Labour will also keep mortgage rates as low as possible with strong Independent Bank of England, which will continue to target stable inflation of 2%. The Conservatives have raised the tax burden to a 70-year high. Hey, there it is. We will ensure taxes on working people are kept as low as possible. Labour will not increase taxes on working people, which is why we will not increase national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. On working people, the additional rate, isn't that the highest one? Let me just double check their names. But that's the highest one, right? Basic, higher or additional rate. You should be increasing both the higher and additional rates. That should be like 60% to start with, and this should be like 50%. Over time as well, you'd phase it in, right? 1%. Just increase them by 1% every year. Obviously, it's not a vote winner, that. I do accept that, but... Labour will address unfairness in the tax system. We will abolish non-dom status once and for all, replacing it with a modern scheme for people genuinely in the country for a short period. I mean, that is good. We will end the use of offshore trusts to avoid inheritance tax so that everyone who makes their home here in the UK pays their taxes here. Private equity is the only industry where performance-related pay is treated as capital gains. Labour will close this loophole. We will modernise HMRC and change the law to tackle tax avoidance. We will increase registration and reporting requirements, strengthen HMRC's powers, invest in new technology, and build capacity within HMRC. This, combined with a renewed focus on tax avoidance by large businesses and the wealthy, will begin to close the tax gap and ensure everyone pays their fair share. My work coach is called Connor. He sanctioned me off all food. I'm very sorry to hear that. I mean, yeah, that stuff is just... It's gone too far already. Making work pay and stuff. The only way you make work pay is by increasing wages, right? If benefits were actually higher than like the average salary for like the majority of people, then I would probably be okay with cutting them, but they've never been like that. You can find like newspaper headlines with like, you know, mum on £100,000 a year, and like it might be true from some weird quirk of the system, but it's usually tackled pretty quickly after after it's highlighted, and it's really rare. And you know, who knows, they might need that much. If you've got loads of kids, you're a single mum, you live in an expensive area, and also you know how to eliminate those kind of weird quirks of the welfare system. You make it universal benefits, simpler. They need to do more with capital gains taxes. Yeah, you answered my question. Thanks, Connor. No, they weren't. I don't think they're that close. It's just I remember the link between them, but maybe it's just that they met. Make work pay always seems to mean make unemployment hurt more. Yeah, exactly. Unemployment, but not just unemployment. Well, broadly defined, right? But not just unemployment among people looking for work. Like also just like with disabled people, older people, people with mental health problems. How Labour will kickstart economic growth. Deliver economic stability with tough spending rules. Now, that is again in question. It's not clear to me that tough spending rules deliver economic stability, except in the tautological sense if you define it as a balanced budget. A new partnership with business to boost growth everywhere. Everywhere. A national wealth fund to invest in jobs. Hey, that sounds good. Planning reform to build 1.5 million new homes. I'm also backing that. Our planning system is like the fucking worst in the rich world. Devolution of power across England. A new deal for working people. A new deal? I mean, that phrasing must be deliberate, right? But that's the first time they've mentioned a new deal. Sustained economic growth is the only route to improving the prosperity of our country and the living standards of working people. That is why it is Labour's first mission for government. It means being pro-business and pro-worker. We are the party of wealth creation. This election follows the chaos of the Conservatives' mini-budget and an unprecedented fall in living standards. Their miserable economic record over the past 15 years has seen productivity and wages flatlining, leaving British families significantly poorer than those in France or Germany. This decline is rooted in two failures. First, an inability to accept that a strong economy can only be built on the contribution of every community and every person, the many, not the few. I like the way he says he's changed the Labour Party, but he's like copying and pasting Corbyn's slogans. If I remember correctly, the IFS said that Labour would have to do £18 billion in cuts if they follow the Manifesto plans. Yeah, I mean, the IFS are good for stuff like that, right? They're probably right. There's something like that. The New Deal is a document agreed with the unions who tried to ditch it but was forced to keep it after they threatened to cut funding. Good. A second to a failure that sustainable growth requires government to be a strategic partner with business, that markets must be shaped, not merely served. These twin failures have led to greater economic insecurity in the financial resilience of households, but also in our national economy at the very time when our world has become less stable and secure. The Conservatives have failed to grasp the implications of a new era of rising global competition and tension, instead leaving our economy on an increasingly shallow and insecure footing. It is time to turn the page. Labour will restore stability, increase investment and reform our economy. We will embrace a new approach to economic management, securonomics. We don't need to do it. We don't need more. We don't need more portmanteaus with onomics on the end. There was freakonomics and that failed, and now we can all move on. Securonomics. I'm going to introduce my new approach to economic management called Goodonomics. That understands sustainable growth relies on a broad base and resilient foundations. Our approach will depend on a dynamic and strategic state. This does not mean ever-growing government, but it does mean a more active, smarter government that works in partnership with business, trade unions, local leaders and devolved governments. Labour will stop the chaos and support business through a stable policy environment, strengthening our economic institutions and giving investors the certainty they need to fuel growth. Labour will seek involvement from industry, trade unions and civil society in our plans for growth so they can contribute to building a stronger economy in all parts of the country. We will strategically use public investment where it can unlock additional private sector investment, create jobs and provide a return for taxpayers. While stability and greater investment will support growth, parts of our economy require substantial reform if we are to create the wealth our country needs. Britain is hampered by a planning regime that means we struggle to build either the infrastructure or housing the country needs. The country remains too centralised, with the economic potential of too many regions and communities ignored. Our labour market fails to provide secure jobs and, as a result, for far too many people, work does not pay. The innovation, dynamism and sheer hard work of British businesses and workers has never been in question. The next Labour government will partner with them to kickstart economic growth.
Keynesian again.
Make Britain Keynesian again. It's Keynesianism with social conservatism. Smarter government is literally how the coalition described itself in 2010. You do get the sense that there's going to be these kind of empty initiatives created, quite low cost but still wasteful, kind of the Strategic Growth Alliance or something like that. Labour's plan for the economy is good news for my customers and colleagues in high streets across the country. Labour will bring stability, good jobs and higher living standards. As a business leader, I am sick and tired of chaos under the Conservatives. I am absolutely convinced that Keir Starmer is the leader to deliver the change this country needs. Labour will end division, strengthen our communities and protect the environment. That's why I'll be voting Labour, and I urge you to do the same. Richard Walker, OBE, Executive Chairman of Iceland. So let me tell you a little bit about how these things work, right? So as George Carlin famously said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. I think it was George Carlin. What really happens here is not that some business leader comes out and says, I really love Keir Starmer, assuming that's good for a second. It's that they probably like know each other, and Keir's like phoned him up and been like, oh, can you give me like a quote for my manifesto? And then it gets put like this, Richard Walker, OBE. I know that because that's how academics endorse each other's books. And they all know each other. So these kinds of quotes are just almost meaningless. Labour will introduce a new industrial strategy. Our approach will be mission-driven and focused on the future. We will work in partnership with industry to seize opportunities and remove barriers to growth. Critically, we will end short-term economic policy making with the establishment of an industrial strategy council on a statutory footing to provide expert advice. We will ensure representation on the council from all nations and regions, businesses and trade unions to drive economic growth in all parts of the country. I bet Matt Sakato will be on that. Labour will take a sectoral approach and be clear-eyed about where the UK enjoys advantages over other countries. Our approach will back what makes Britain great. Our excellent research institutions, professional services, advanced manufacturing and creative industries. We will ensure a pro-business environment with a competition and regulatory framework that supports innovation, investment and high-quality jobs. Procurement and trade policy will also be aligned with our industrial strategy priorities. Financial services are one of Britain's greatest success stories. It's so weird. Why do they all say this, right? Like, now let's be clear, right? Finance is a big sector. It's a complicated sector. It's clearly the financial sector is like necessary. The birth of double entry bookkeeping and credit is like part of the birth of commerce and capitalism, right? But the UK financial sector is like so overinflated. It's an engine of like inequality. It's been an engine of speculation and crashes. It's been an engine of inflating the home sector, right? Why do all of them say this uncritically, especially since they all of these manifestos mention the financial crisis? Labour will create the conditions to support innovation and growth in the sector through supporting new technology, including open banking and open finance, and ensuring a pro-regulatory framework. What does it mean by open banking? Financial data to be shared between banks and third-party service providers through the use of application programming interfaces. Traditionally, banks have kept customer financial data within their own closed systems. Open banking allows customers to share their financial information securely and electronically with other banks or other authorized financial organizations, such as payment providers, lenders, and insurance companies. Proponents argue open banking provides greater transparency and data control for account holders and could allow for new financial services to be provided. Proponents also say that it aims to promote competition, innovation, and customer empowerment in the banking and financial sectors. Opponents argue that open banking can lead to greater security risk and exploitation of consumers. The first open banking regulations were introduced by the European Union in 2015, and many other countries have introduced financial regulations related to open banking since. It comes with security risk. Look, so, I mean, it's just like the European Union are doing it. But it's just like, how is that? I don't think this is going to be like bear the weight that you want it to bear. It's like some random technological fix, right? That's like, I don't know. It's probably going to be marginal, and it has like pros and cons, and like what, like this is the specific thing you mention in your industrial policy. Our other great British industries need certainty over the policies that will apply to them. In opposition, Labour has worked with the automotive, life sciences and creative sectors on the approach we will take to policy. In government, we will set out plans for these and other vital sectors of the economy. Here he is, Google. He's got a hard hat with Google on it. He's pulling a pint, speaking to a woman. Oh, there's two women. Great. It's all great. He's so inspiring. And he's with a robot dog as well. I bet, I'm sure at the end of a long day, he can, have a bit of fun with his robot dog and crack a joke. Biden's industrial policy is light years ahead. Well, the thing about Biden's industrial policy is that it has the benefit of existing. You know what I mean? When one thing exists and another thing doesn't. So it's deregulation. I mean, it does feel a little bit deregulation. Okay. So we're on boosting investment. So this is starting to feel deregulation, isn't it? Business has for too long been hampered by a government that does not work with it. As a result, investment in the UK is too low. To address this long-standing problem, Labour will use every available lever. Public investment, where it supports and de-risks additional private investment, is one important tool being used successfully across the world. It can create good jobs across the country and would mean British taxpayers can reap the benefits of economic growth. To realise these opportunities, Labour will establish a national wealth fund. Okay. Capitalised with 7.3 billion over the course of the next Parliament, the National Wealth Fund will have a remit to support Labour's growth and clean energy missions, making transformative investments across every part of the country. The fund will have a target of attracting £3 of private investment for every £1 of public investment, creating jobs across the country. We plan to allocate 1.6 billion to upgrade ports and build supply chains across the UK. Okay. Uh-oh.
As far as I can tell, there are two economies, the financial and the substantial. The financial sector doesn't make anything substantial and therefore doesn't contribute to the amount of stuff available?
I mean, that's partly true, but I'd be wary of a conclusion where only stuff is important in the economy, right? A good financial sector is the underpinning, right? It's like the fertile soil of a good economy. But I mean, that's a far cry from saying that the current UK financial sector is a net positive yeah. Thank you for the donation, by the way. 1.5 billion to new gigafactories so our automotive industry leads the world. 2.5 billion to rebuild our steel industry. 1 billion to accelerate the deployment of carbon capture. 500 million to support the manufacturing of green hydrogen. Okay. Labour will also act to increase investment from pension funds in UK markets. We will adopt reforms to ensure that workplace pension schemes take advantage of consolidation and scale, to deliver better returns for UK savers and greater productive investment for UK PLC. We will also undertake a review of the pensions landscape to consider what further steps are needed to improve pension outcomes and increase investment in UK markets. A business tax regime matters for investors. So, yeah, I was going to say this. I mean, I want to give them a chance, but the word de-risking sets off alarm bells, right? Because basically what you're doing is you're not spending public sector money on projects and missions. What you're doing is you're actually allowing the private sector to de-risk its own investments, and therefore the taxpayer, right, public sector, is providing the underpinning and footing the bill should things go wrong, right? Whereas the private sector gets all of the upside. So that kind of sets off alarm bells. So I'm seeing that this industrial policy is less of the kind of Biden stuff, which is, the private and public sector working in, well, I don't know, but I mean, even Biden's is a bit like that, to be honest with you. But I think I'm getting the feeling it's more deregulation, less direct money spent, and more de-risking the public sector. And it's not really industrial policy, to be honest. The business tax regime matters for investors. It is not just the rates of tax that matter, but also certainty. Under the Conservatives, there has been constant chopping and changing. Corporation tax has changed 26 times, and multiple fiscal events have made drastic changes, often at little notice. Labour will stop the chaos and turn the page with a strategic approach that gives certainty and allows long-term planning. We are committed to one major fiscal event a year, giving families and businesses due warning of tax and spending policies. We will publish a roadmap for business taxation for the next Parliament, which will allow businesses to plan investments with confidence. Labour will cap corporation tax at the current level of 25%, the lowest in the G7 for the entire Parliament. We will act if tax changes in other countries pose a risk to UK competitiveness. We will retain a permanent full expensing system for tech capital investment and the annual investment allowance for small businesses, and we will give firms greater clarity on what qualifies for allowances to improve business investment decisions. They keep talking about chaos, don't we? The current business rate system disincentivizes investment, creates uncertainty, and places an undue burden on our high streets. In England, Labour will replace the business rate system so we can raise the same revenue but in a fairer way. This new system will level the playing field between the high street and online giants, better incentivize investment, tackle empty properties, and support entrepreneurship. I mean, this new system, again, it's just fluff. It's actually, I have to say, that Labour's manifesto is actually fluffier than the Tories' one. So, pick your poison. Do you want sort of feel-good fluff, or do you want just actively misleading data? That is the choice that presents itself to us in the next election. Britain is grinding to a halt. Rail cancellations are at record levels. Energy prices have risen faster here than any other country in Western Europe, and not a single reservoir has been built in the last 30 years. This is not an accident. Conservative chaos has seen major projects abandoned, decades-long delayed, cost overruns, uncertainty for supply chains, and our infrastructure crumbling. You know what? Conservative chaos, right? In 2010... I'm still slightly haunted by how many times the Conservatives repeated deficit denial. And I actually think, Labour are going to win, right? But Conservative chaos is actually quite a good soundbite. It's alliteration. It's completely accurate. It's memorable. So, yeah, it's galling for any normal person to read this because it's a political manifesto. So it's full of that kind of message discipline, but I don't hate it as a slogan. Labour will end this chaos by Alright, that one was superfluous. Chaos. Control F chaos. Wait, let's see how many. I don't know if the whole 8. Stop the chaos. I think that's only in the Conservative chaos and the chaos. This is only in the economic growth part, right? Or is it in the whole thing? Aligned with our industrial strategy and regional development priorities, including improving rail connectivity across the north of Europe, the strategy will guide investment plans and give the private sector certainty about the project pipeline. We will work closely with business to map and address the delivery challenges we face. We will create a new national infrastructure and service transformation authority, bringing together existing bodies to set strategic infrastructure priorities and oversee the design, scope, and delivery of projects. The current planning regime acts as a major brake on economic growth. Labour will make the changes we need to forge ahead with new roads, railways, reservoirs and other nationally significant infrastructure. We will set out new national policy statements, make major projects faster and cheaper by slashing red tape, and build support for development by ensuring communities directly benefit. We will also update national planning policy to ensure the planning system meets the needs of the modern economy, making it easier to build laboratories, digital infrastructure and gigafactories. Labour will ensure economic regulation supports growth and investment, promotes competition, works for consumers and enables innovation. In an ever more connected world, Britain's communication network is also vital. Under the Conservatives, investment in 5G is falling behind other countries, and the rollout of gigabit broadband has been slow. Labour will make a renewed push to fulfil the ambition of full gigabit and national 5G coverage by 2030. Again, note that the Conservative Manifesto used 5G and broadband as like a selling point, and they were like, we've expanded it so far, and then Labour are like, no, well, compared to Europe, it's not that good. Royal Mail remains a key part of the UK's infrastructure. Labour will ensure that any proposed takeover is robustly scrutinised and that appropriate guarantees are forthcoming that protect the interests of the workforce, customers and the United Kingdom, including the need to maintain a comprehensive universal service obligation. Labour will also explore new business and governance models for Royal Mail so that workers and customers who rely on Royal Mail services can have a stronger voice in the governance and strategic direction of the company. Okay. Are they saying they're going to turn it into a co-op? They're going to turn Royal Mail into a co-op? I doubt it. It's probably going to be some bullshit like corporate consultation stuff. Is this all... Well, this is all the economy. Pretty long. The problem is they're not saying that much in this. I mean, they're saying some things a little bit. Three cheers for technocratic kleptocrats. The gigafactories. The gigafactories are just... Oh, God. Planning is one thing, but it's not what holds back investment. Fiscal rules need to be challenged. Planning is being used as an excuse. Yeah, I agree. It's like... I don't think the chronic underinvestment in the UK is just caused by planning, right? It's obviously much bigger than that. Fiscal policy, Brexit, the fact that we're generally an empire in decline. Rebuilding Britain means modernising our transport infrastructure. Our road network is plagued by long-promised projects that are never delivered. The potholes cratering our roads are a visible sign of the decline under 14 years of Conservative rule. I'm surprised they didn't put chaos in that paragraph. Cars remain by far the most popular form of transport. Labour will maintain and renew our road network to ensure it serves drivers, cyclists and other road users, remains safe and tackles congestion. We will fix an additional 1 million potholes across England in each year of the next Parliament, funded by deferring the A27 bypass, which is poor value for money. Hey, that's near where I live. Labour will further support drivers by tackling the soaring cost of car insurance, and has set out no car love. In our automotive plan, Labour will support the transition to electric vehicles by accelerating the rollout of charge points, giving certainty to manufacturers by restoring the phase-out date of 2030 for new cars with internal combustion engines. So this is 2030 that Rishi Sunak abandoned. And supporting buyers of second-hand electric cars by standardising the information supplied on the condition of batteries. Labour will overhaul Britain's railways. 14 years of Conservative neglect have failed passengers, businesses and taxpayers. We will put passengers at the heart of the service by reforming the railways and bringing them into public ownership. We will do this as contracts with existing operators expire or are broken through a failure to deliver without costing taxpayers a penny in compensation. Great British Railways will deliver a unified system that focuses on reliable, affordable, high quality and efficient services, along with ensuring safety and accessibility. It will be responsible for investment, day-to-day operational delivery and innovations and improvements for passengers working with publicly owned rail operators in Wales and Scotland. Mayors will have a role in designing the services in their areas. There will be a duty to promote and grow the use of rail freight. Open access operators are an important part of the rail system and will have an ongoing role. Labour will also create a tough new passenger watchdog focused on driving up standards. What does that mean? Passenger watchdog? Oh, for passengers. I was thinking it was like something to watch passengers. There's no transportation problem when the solution isn't trains. Well, I disagree with that, because I do think that there are transportation problems where the solution is buses. Where you can't necessarily get railways to everywhere. Local communities have lost control over their bus routes. Fares have increased, routes have disappeared, and services are unreliable. Building on the work of Labour mayors, we will reform the broken system through new powers for local leaders to franchise local bus services, and we will lift the ban on municipal ownership. There's a ban on municipal ownership. Since 2017, local councils have been banned from setting up their own municipal bus companies. What the fuck? Oh, God. We live in the stupidest timeline. Under the Conservative transport sector, I'm learning a lot about my country and why it's so shit. It's funny because I don't know. I mean, there's always more to learn, isn't there? But like, I would have considered myself relatively knowledgeable about like what's happened over the Conservative government. Like, I've looked into it a lot. You know what I mean? I didn't realize that they'd banned fucking local governments from having bus routes in 2017. Under the Conservatives, transport services have remained fragmented and inefficient, with companies and sectors failing to speak to and plan with each other. Labour will give mayors the power to create unified and integrated transport systems, allowing for more seamless journeys and to promote active travel networks. Labour will also develop a long-term strategy for transport, ensuring transport infrastructure can be delivered efficiently and on time. Labour will secure the aviation industry's long-term future, including through promoting sustainable aviation fuels and encouraging airspace modernisation. Yeah, Andy Burnham did that in Manchester. He did the buses and the trams are now unified, right? And they've got bees on them, the Manchester bee. So that's all transport systems should have nice pictures on all of the vehicles. That would be in my manifesto. Delivering growth and raising productivity depends on fresh thinking and new ideas. Britain has many cutting-edge businesses, but innovation needs to be converted into commercial success in every corner of our country. Labour will make Britain the best place to start and grow a business. We will ensure our industrial strategy supports the development of the artificial intelligence sector. Has everyone got their bingo cards? AI. I like how these manifestos were written like a little while ago, and even now the sheen of AI has like worn off a bit. Removes planning barriers to new data sets. I mean, this is just the same thing, right? It's like, okay, planning reform is good, but I think the thing that planning reform is going to help with the most is housing and the transport sector. To then invoke it as something that's going to specifically help AI seems like a bit of a reach. We will create a national data library to bring together existing research programs and to help deliver data-driven public services, while maintaining strong safeguards and ensuring all of the public benefit. We're going to have all of the good of AI and none of the bad, everybody. Again, this is, people, I want more good things. Okay? And people say there might be drawbacks to AI, and to that I say we will not have those drawbacks in our version of AI. We're gonna commit to just the good stuff, just the good AI. Reality is a parody, and you can't convince me otherwise. Yeah. Do you think they use ChatGPT? Yeah, it is a bit like, unironically, like, did an AI write this? I don't think politicians have noticed that AI is no longer cool. Yeah, they probably run their text through it. Yeah. Man, I would not run my text through AI. Labour will scrap short funding cycles for key R&D institutions in favour of 10-year budgets that allow meaningful partnerships with industry to keep the UK at the forefront of global innovation. We'll work with universities to support spin-outs and work with industry to ensure startups have access to the finance they need to grow. We will also simplify the procurement process to support innovation and reduce micromanagement with a mission-driven approach. Regulators are currently ill-equipped to deal with the dramatic development of new technologies which often cut across traditional industries and sectors. Labour will create a new regulatory innovation office, bringing together existing functions across government. This office will help regulators update regulation, speed up approval timelines, and coordinate issues that span existing boundaries. Labour will ensure the safe development and use of AI models by introducing binding regulation on the handful of companies developing the most powerful AI models, and by banning the creation of sexually explicit deepfakes. I mean, that is such an ad hoc approach, and just like only a handful of companies. Like, who? What if there's a new company that does it? Like, they need to think about that more. That's so ad hoc. I mean, yeah, banning the creation of sexually explicit deepfakes. I can get behind that. Labour will support diverse business models which bring innovation and new products to the market. This includes the cooperative sector, and we will aim to double the size of the UK's cooperative and mutual sector. We will work with the sector to address the barriers they face, such as accessing finance. Okay. I mean, I want more on how exactly. But financing is a real barrier for co-ops. So Labour's plan for economic growth has been developed for all UK businesses, but small firms, entrepreneurs and the self-employed face unique challenges. That is why, in partnership, Labour has developed a plan for small businesses, the lifeblood of communities and high streets across the country. We will take action on late payments to ensure small businesses and the self-employed are paid on time. We will improve guidance and remove barriers to exporting for small businesses. Reform of the British Business Bank, including a stronger mandate to support growth in the regions and nations, will make it easier for small and medium-sized enterprises to access capital. We will also reform procurement rules to give them greater access to government contracts. The post office is an essential service in communities across the country. Labour will look for ways to strengthen the post office network in consultation with sub-postmasters, trade unions and customers, and support the development of new products, service and business models such as banking hubs that will help reinvigorate the high street. When you say banking hub, you do your banking face-to-face, whoever you're with. Located in communities across the UK that are owned by Cash Access UK and operated by Post Office in partnership with 9 major high street banks. So this manifesto is just full of like ideas which drop out of the sky, and just like banking hubs. It's like, I don't know, are those a good thing? Like, does it matter? Take action, provide guidance, reform rules. What do you mean? Please just tell me. Yeah. Could I fake Rachel Reeves telling people economies works like her handbag? Do you mean, I don't understand that sentence fully, sorry. Postal banking. Is this a Corbyn policy? I mean, one of the things about these manifestos when you actually read them is that they're obviously like written by different people in different places. And like some of it might have been like copied kind of from the previous manifesto, right? So they're actually kind of incoherent. The dream of home ownership is now out of reach for too many young people. Oh, preach. The Conservatives have failed to act, even though the housing crisis is well known to be one of the country's biggest barriers to growth. Well, I mean, it's a problem. Whether it's a barrier to economic growth, I don't know. I guess in terms of houses built, but yeah, I don't know. Labour will get Britain building again, creating jobs across England with 1.5 million new homes over the next Parliament. That is quite a lot. We will immediately update the National Policy Planning Framework to undo damaging Conservative changes, including restoring mandatory housing targets. We will take tough action to ensure that planning authorities have up-to-date local plans and reform and strengthen the presumption in favour of sustainable development. Labour will support local authorities by funding additional planning officers, through increasing the rate of the stamp duty surcharge paid by non-UK residents. We will ensure local communities continue to shape house building in their area, but where necessary, Labour will not be afraid to make full use of intervention powers to build the houses we need. Does that mean building them yourselves? And additional planning officers. I mean, I don't know. Isn't the point just that you like abolish the fucking National Town and City Planning Act or whatever it's called, the old one? Labour will take a brownfield first approach, prioritising the development of previously unused land wherever possible and fast-tracking approval of urban brownfield sites. But brownfield development alone will not be enough to meet our housing need. Labour is committed to preserving the Greenbelt, which has secured England's towns and cities well over many decades. Under the Conservatives, Greenbelt land is regularly released for development but haphazardly and often for speculative house building. Without changing its purpose or general extent, Labour will take a more strategic approach to Greenbelt land designation and release to build more homes in the right places. The release of lower quality Greybelt land will be prioritised, and we will introduce golden rules to ensure development benefits communities and nature. In partnership with local leaders and communities, a Labour government will build a new generation of new towns, inspired by the proud legacy of the 1945 Labour government. Alongside urban extensions and regeneration projects, these will form part of a series of large-scale new communities across England. Housing need in England cannot be met without planning for growth on a larger than local scale, so we will introduce effective new mechanisms for cross-boundary strategic planning. Labour will require all combined and mayoral authorities to strategically plan for housing growth in their areas. We will give combined authorities new planning powers along with new freedoms and flexibilities to make better use of grant funding. Labour will further reform compulsory purchase compensation rules to improve land assembly, speed up site delivery, and deliver housing infrastructure amenity and transport benefits in the public interest. We will take steps to ensure that for specific types of development schemes, landowners are awarded fair compensation rather than inflated prices based on the prospect of planning permission. Labour will deliver the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation. We will strengthen planning obligations to make sure new developments provide more affordable homes, make changes to the Affordable Homes Programme to ensure that it delivers more homes from existing funding, and support councils and housing associations to build their capacity and make a greater contribution to affordable housing supply. Labour will prioritise the building of new social rented homes and better protect our existing stock by reviewing the increased right to buy discounts introduced in 2012 and increasing protections on newly built social housing. Labour wants exemplary development to be the norm, not the exception. We will take steps to ensure that we are building more high quality, well designed and sustainable homes and creating places that increase climate resilience of course, and promote nature recovery. We will implement solutions to unlock the building of homes affected by nutrient neutrality without weakening environmental protections. Labour will work with local authorities to give first-time buyers the first chance to buy homes and end the farce of entire developments being sold off to international investors before houses are even built. And we will introduce a permanent comprehensive mortgage guarantee scheme to support first-time buyers who struggle to save for a large deposit with lower mortgage costs. So, in summary, they're saying they're going to build a load of new towns, and I'm not convinced that that's necessarily what the country needs. It's that the towns that already exist have fallen into decline. Plus, they're kind of, although they say they're going to revamp planning law, like there are serious problems with UK planning law, right? Like the fact that it's extremely centralized and decentralized at the same time. So you basically have to go through two processes to build anything. Like a kind of centralized government process and a more localized process, and they just don't really fully mention it. I mean, again, it's just it's quite corporate, isn't it? It's just like we're going to do the good things, and yeah, I can accept that they want to expand housing, and they're probably going to make some reforms, but it just doesn't seem anywhere near concrete enough. And like quality as well. They're like, oh yeah, high quality, well designed and sustainable homes. And creating places that increase climate resilience and promote nature recovery. Again, it's just like all the good things and none of the bad things. That's what we stand for. Tony Blair said that a policy manifesto should be focused. Well, I mean, that is definitely something Blair was right about, right? This is so big. This is the problem, right? So what they've done is they've got this. Bear in mind, this is one. We still haven't finished one of their five pillar mission, right? And the problem is that this one is so poorly defined that they've just blabbered about literally everything. I mean, I should imagine the green thing. The green part, I think, is like still long enough. I wonder. This one's especially long. The Kickstart Economic Growth one is very, very long. Break down barriers to opportunity. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've seen enough. It's like it's fine. Like their aims are good. Obviously, they're much better than Conservatives. But beyond that, like you don't get much from this. And I have to say once more, you know, I don't like saying it. The Conservative Manifesto was actually much more concrete. I think Keir Starmer is just very convinced that he should be the next Prime Minister, and that's his main belief. This is why there are so many pictures of him. Just copy-paste Japan's permitting system without the excess earthquake stuff? Yeah, like, I agree, yeah. Japan, let's use a system like Japan's. That would be like a really concrete, sensible thing for them to say. I mean, I don't hate... I think building on the Greenbelt is necessary. I don't think the Greenbelt was a particularly good idea or particularly well executed. I don't think we're in danger of excessive building on the Greenbelt. But yeah, big old Tower of Waffle is literally, it's so long, I've actually lost the will to live. I lost the will to live with the Conservative one because it was so full of factual errors and I literally had to fact check every sentence. Whereas this one, I don't have to fact check anything because there are almost no actual claims in it. So there you go, pick your poison.